الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. One more Surah Al-Fatiha for the marhumin of this community. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. السلام على الحسين المظلوم المقتول المجروح العطشان المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ الذي غسله دم وكفنه رمال كربلاء. أما بعد فقد قال لا في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم ولله جنود السماوات والأرض وكان الله عليما حكيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Since this is the night before Arba'een, if I could request you all to move closer together and move a little bit forward so that when it's time for musibah, we can have an environment where we can mourn. For the protection of the believers and for the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. For the love of Imam al-Husayn and Sayyida Zainab, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. The night is that night which is before the day of Arba'een, a day which is no less than the day of Ashura. We find that Karbala has become the center of our hearts, that it's amazing to think that 30 million individuals are gathering in a land where a man who in his final moments, after burying his 6-month-old child, he looks towards the right, he looks towards the left. He sees nothing except for the bodies of his companions, and he begins to speak towards those bodies. He says, Ya Habib ibn Madahir, wa ya Muslim ibn al-Awsaja, wa ya Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Ya Abtal al-Safa wa ya Fursan al-Hija, Mali unadikum fala tujiboon, wa ad'ukum fala tasma'oon. He says, O Habib, O Muslim, O Zuhair, why do I call upon you but you don't answer me? And why do I invite you but you don't hear me? The narrations, they state that out of ishq, the bodies of the shuhada, they began to shake when the imam, he called them by their names. You see, that Imam who upon that day was alone, today 30 million are gathering within that land of Karbala. And it goes to show that this individual was not an individual who ruled over the bodies. For if he had a rulership over the bodies, you find that it's limited in time. But no, this is that man who rules over the hearts of an individual. That this is that king who is timeless. You know, people, they say that what is the sign of a king? They say a king, he has servants. A king, he has land. A king, he has people who give him food and water and luxuries. I say, what bigger king in the world is there than Aba Abdullah? That a king has palaces. Look at all of the Imam Barghas throughout the world in the name of Hussein. A king has servant. That today over 300 million individuals strive to call themselves the servants of Hussein. That within the land of Karbala, there are individuals who are doctors and engineers and PhDs who wait 20 and 30 years just to sweep the dust in the land of Karbala. This is who that Hussein ibn Ali is. And you find that this trend of the remembrance of Imam al-Hussein increasing is going to continue to increase until the return of the Imam. Because when you look in the narrations, and this narration is a narration which is found in the book, but this is also a narration which Ayatollah al-Bahjat would say within his lectures. It's stated when the Imam, he returns. The Imam, he'll stand in front of the Kaaba. When he stands in front of the Kaaba, the people of the world, they'll be gathered in front of the Imam. When he stands over there, he'll make 5 statements to introduce himself. And each of those 5 statements will be through his grandfather Hussein. You know what the Imam will say? He'll look at the people, the Kaaba behind him. He'll say, Ala ya ahl al-alam, ana imamul qa'im. He'll say, O people of the world, I am that Imam who will uprise. Then he says, Ala ya ahl al-alam, ana samsamul muntaqim. That, O people of the world, I am that individual who'll take revenge. Revenge for who? His grandfather Hussein. Then he says, Ala ya ahl al-alam, inna jaddi al-Hussein qataluhu atshanan. That he says, O people of the world, my grandfather Hussein was killed thirsty. Then he says, Ala ya ahl al-alam, inna jaddi al-Hussein tarahuhu uryanan. That, O people of the world, when they killed my grandfather, they didn't even leave that clothes, that dress which was upon his body. Then he says, Ala ya ahl al-alam, inna jaddi al-Hussein sahaquhu udwanan. That, O people of the world, my grandfather Hussein is that individual that after they killed him, they broke his limbs into pieces. You see, the Imam, when he makes this announcement, all 5 of these statements, he introduces himself through his grandfather Hussein. But he doesn't say, O Shia, O Muslims, O people of a certain location. He says, O people of the world. The fact that he addresses the people of the world and describes himself through Imam al-Hussein goes to show that the future of the world is such a future that the entire world will know the name of Imam al-Hussein when the Imam, he returns. And this is that reality. And there are 2 institutions that promote this reality, that promote this future, that promote the name of Imam al-Hussein spreading. The first is that majlis which you are sitting in today. That when you sit in this majlis, don't think it's something small that you're in this majlis of Hussein, because it takes tawfiq to come towards the majlis of Hussein. No, it takes the du'as of somebody to come to the majlis of Hussein. No, not the du'as of anyone. The du'as of that mother who was broken hearted when her son was killed within Karbala. It's the du'as of Zahra which bring you over here. Which Zahra? That Zahra, when she would carry Hussein within the womb, she would say, Ya Rasulullah, this child, he speaks to me when he's within the womb. Rasulullah says, Oh Zahra, what does he say to you? Zahra says, he says, Ana gharib, that I'm alone. Then he says, Ana madloom, that I'm oppressed. Then he says, Ana atshana, that I'm thirsty. Zahra says, oh my father, why does this child say this? Rasulullah says, oh Zahra, this is Husain, Zahra. Zahra, this is that Husain which will be killed within the land of Karbala when he'll be left alone upon that day. You see, this is the majlis of Husain. But no, the second institution, which spreads the message of Imam al-Husain, which keeps the memory of the Imam, is the ziyarah and the visitation of the Imam. That if you want to know the difference between the majlis and the ziyarah, know this. That when you go on ziyarah, you are going towards the Imam. You are visiting the Imam. But when you hold a majlis, you are inviting the Imam to come towards you. That this is the difference between the ziyarah and the majlis. No, I'll say it in a different way. Ziyarah is that inheritance which Husain left for his followers. That when the followers, their hearts begin to deaden, go towards the ziyarah of Husain, the majlis is that inheritance which Zainab left for the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Husain would say that I am alone. People, they visit Husain. Zainab, she would mourn. People, they mourn in the remembrance of Sayyidah Zainab. This is that reality of the majlis. This is that reality of the ziyarah of Imam al-Husain. And go through the traditions. Go to Kamilu Ziyarat. Kamilu Ziyarat is a book which Ayatollah al-Khuwi had a very strong opinion about the authenticity of the narrations within this book. And you find narration after narration. One example, one narration states, and it's of the sixth Imam, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi. Imam as-Sadiq, he says that the time an individual spends at the ziyarah of Husain, that time is not removed from the length of his life. That time which you spend on the ziyarah, your set time of life, that length, that time you spend there, it's not removed from that life. And this is that reality. And you know, tonight is that night before the day of Arba'een. That whose heart isn't there, that they wish to be in Karbala. But for us that can't be in Karbala, there's a narration of Rasulullah. That narration of Rasulullah, it states that the one who does my ziyarah from afar is like the one who has done my ziyarah up close. Of course, being there has a benefit. But if you can't be there, then do the ziyarah from afar. And what does ziyarah mean? When you go to the works of the ulama, when they define and they describe ziyarah, they define ziyarah as what? They defined it as ittihad bayna zair wal mazur. That unity between the visitor and the one whom they're visiting. And in order to achieve this reality of unison in what? Unison in spirit, unison in message, unison in action, unison in belief, unison in thought, the topic which I've decided for tonight's majlis is examining the concept of solidarity and disassociation within the advancement of the soul of the human being. In other words, what role does tawalla and tabarra have in developing the soul of a person? And tonight's discussion is a discussion which will be more philosophical, it'll be more spiritual as opposed to historical. When you hear these discussions of tawalla and tabarra, you get associated towards historical discussions. But no, this is from amongst the writings of Nasiruddin Tusi, and based upon those writings, it'll be a more spiritual discussion. Now the question arises, is that why does this topic have value? That if we're analyzing this topic, it must have some relevance within our life that we are discussing this. You find the answer, it lies in this. Is that when you examine the event of Karbala, there are many different lenses and angles that you can examine the event from. That many of us, we're interested in different things. For example, the one interested in social justice will examine the morality within the event. Those who are interested within what? The musibah, they'll go and look through the books of the maqatil. But you find in the same way, one area of Karbala which is often ignored and not analyzed as much is the spiritual dimension of the members of the caravan of Imam al-Husain. When you look at an individual like Habib ibn Madahir, an individual who was seen sitting by the Furat, as he's sitting by the Furat,
Furat. He's looking into the water of the Furat. They say, "Oh Habib, what do you see within the water?" Habib, he looks up at that man. He says, "The news, it tells me that Muawiyah has just passed away. For my master Ali has taught me ilm al-balaya wal-manaya," that knowledge of the deaths of individuals. That a man who's able to look into the water and deduce that Muawiyah has passed away in an area like Sham must be a man who has an incredible level of spirituality. And you find this is why in Ziyaratul Arba'een, which many of you will recite tomorrow, we say what? We say that Imam al-Husayn, you strive. Why? You strive to save the servants of Allah min al-jahalati wa hirati dalala, from ignorance and the confusion of going astray. That this goes to show that there is an outward exoteric reality and there is an inward esoteric reality. The outward reality of Karbala is that Imam al-Husayn stands up against Yazid and he establishes those principles. But the esoteric reality is this, is that a human being, wherever he is fighting with his soul, wherever he stands between right and wrong, he has the example of Hussein from Karbala to take him towards that path which is right. And this is why Karbala is a timeless reality. And the way Islam is a timeless reality, because it relates towards the fitrat and the nature of a human being. You find Karbala is a timeless reality because it associates with the nature of a human being. You know, there was a Hindu teacher. He was telling his students about Hussein. The student replied by saying that Hussein is a Muslim, we are Hindu. What does Hussein have to do with us? He looks at his student. He says to him that, "Would you ever marry your sister?" He says, "No, I wouldn't. That's a disgusting thought. My nature, my conscience, it doesn't allow me." The teacher replies by saying that conscience is Hussein. That Hussein is that reality which pertains towards the morality of human being, which is within the human being. And this is why you find that the members of the caravan of Imam al-Hussein, I'll give you one example of their immense spirituality. You know, our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salamullahi alayhi. The fifth Imam would say on the day of Ashura, when the companions, they had the arrows going into their bodies, they didn't feel any pain on the day of Ashura. Now some, when they looked at this hadith, they think to themselves that how is this physically possible? Is their pain receptors being turned off? No, the reality, it's not this. I'll give you an example from the Quran. In the story of Zulaykha and Yusuf, after Zulaykha, she seduces Yusuf, word goes around Egypt that Zulaykha, she had a thing for this servant. To squash this rumor, Zulaykha, she invites the women of Egypt. When she invites the women of Egypt, she placed fruit in front of them. She placed a knife within their hand. When they saw Yusuf come out, they were so enchanted by the beauty of Yusuf, they didn't realize that their hand was being cut. The Quran says, فَقْطَعْ أَيْدِيَهُنَّ. In the same way, this narration, it states that those companions of Karbala, it's not that they physically didn't feel any pain, but it was that spiritual reality, because they was absorbed in that one who was the pride of Yusuf. They were absorbed in the one who saved the message of Yusuf. They were absorbed in the one who is the inheritor of the prophets. And you find one, he only reaches this reality when he has gone to the depths of tawalla and tabarra, solidarity and disassociation. And tonight's discussion will take place in 4 steps. Number 1, where does the Quran emphasize the purification of the soul? And what are the stages of the soul to come up to the point of tawalla and tabarra? Number 2, what are the prerequisites for tawalla, solidarity? And what are the prerequisites for dissociation? What attributes do we need? Number 3, when we reach the stage of tawalla and tabarra within our life, in what ways do we see contentment and submission come into our life? And what are the signs of this contentment and submission? And number 4, Why did Sayyida Zainab in the court of Ibn Ziyad say, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, that I saw nothing except beauty? And how does this show the immense spiritual status of this woman? You find that upon these 4 points, we'll analyze this topic and we'll come to a conclusion about what role dissociation and solidarity has within the soul of an individual. Now, when you go towards the Quran, you find there are a number of verses in the Quran which emphasize the purification of the soul and the success of a human being. I'll give you an example, Surah Ash-Shams. Allah, He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَالشَّمْسِ وَالضُّحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Allah says what? He says, by the sun and when it shines, and by the moon and when it follows it, and by the daytime when it spreads, and by the nighttime when it covers, and by what? The skies and when they were fashioned, and by the earth and the one who made it, and by the soul and the one who proportioned it, and the one who taught it right from wrong. Successful is the one who purifies it, and destroyed is the one who destroys it. You see, Allah within this chapter, He takes 7 or 11 oaths, depending on which angle you're looking at the wordings. The Mufassirin said, He takes 7 or 11 oaths to emphasize the importance of the purification of the soul. You know, why do you take an oath? You take an oath for a number of reasons. The first reason you take an oath is because the thing you're taking an oath upon is something which is important. That when people take oaths, they take it upon that which is a high reality. The second reason why people take oaths is why? To show that subject matter is a very important matter. You find 11 oaths Allah takes, or 7 depending on the angle, to show how important the purification of the soul is within the life of the human being. And this is that reality which is associated with tawalla and tabarra. You find a human being, when his soul is at the most bottom level, when his soul is at that animalistic level, you find there are 2 qualities within the soul. One is shahwa, the other is ghadab. One is your desires, the other is your anger. The difference between your desires and your anger is that your desires are the do button. Your anger is the don't button, that your desires, they take you towards something. Your anger, they take you away from something, that both of these are natural realities. You know, Islam didn't punish you for having anger. It punished you in the way that you would act upon your anger. That's why it's stated that you're not punished for your anger, you are punished by your anger. Why? Because anger is a natural reality. Anything which is a natural reality, Islam, it does not remove that. That's why those individuals who say don't cry over this, don't cry over Imam al-Hussein, they're dehumanizing a human being, as I've said over here on a previous occasion. So you find this is that first level. But when you find that your soul begins to evolve and you continue in the path of Allah, that desire and that anger, it changes into something else. It changes into shock and irad. It changes into yearning and aversion. Yearning and aversion meaning you have an inclination towards something. Aversion meaning you don't want to go towards that thing. So you find that this change, it happened. But no, the human being, once he continues to develop and he continues to utilize his intellect, you find that that shawk and that irad, it turns into karahat and irada, dislike and like. But this dislike and like is under the intellect which the human being has been given. But it's that intellect which differentiated the human beings from other creations. After all, doesn't the Quran say, Allama Adama asma'a kullaha, that Adam, he was taught the names. The fact that Adam was taught the names is what differentiated Adam from anyone else. And this is what differentiates Ahlul Bayt from the rest of society, the ilm of Ahlul Bayt. You know, other individuals, sometimes they have virtues in one category, but in other category, they're completely zero. For example, we've seen names in Islamic history, they had bravery bravery. But what did they do with that bravery? They killed the companions of Rasulullah like Malik bin Nuwaira. You find that individual, he had bravery, quote unquote, but he didn't have knowledge and taqwa. But that individual who combines bravery and that individual who combines knowledge and taqwa is that man who is able to sit on the mimbar and say, Saluni, Saluni. Ask me before you lose me. That's why they came up to Ali. They say, oh Ali, in the battlefield you never have a horse. It was famous about Amir al-Mu'mineen that he wouldn't have a horse on the battlefield. They say, Ya Ali, why don't you keep a horse on the battlefield? The Imam says you need a horse for one of two reasons. Either when you're running away from someone, and I never run away in the battlefield. Or number two, when you're running after someone. When somebody runs after me, I don't chase after anyone. That this is the humanity within Amir al-Mu'mineen. And you find this is through that ilm which the Imam he had. So you find this is that next reality. As I said, the soul, it develops. Now it's reached the stage of iradat and karahat, like and dislike. But you find the intellect is even guided by something. The intellect is guided by the Imam of the time, by the message of the Imam of the time. And before that, the prophets and the hujjah of Allah. When the intellect is guided by the hujjah of Allah, that karahat and iradat, it turns into tawalla and tabarra, to solidarity and dissociation. So you see the development. You see the development. At the bottom level, you started with shawat and a desire which was taking you towards something wrong. This shawat, it developed and developed, it reached the stage of tawalla, that your likes become the likes what Allah would want of a human being. And on the other side, that anger, it turns into tabarra and disassociation. And this is that reality which we see from the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada, that in the spiritual development of tawalla and tabarra, there were individuals who joined the Imam from Medina, but some individuals they joined in Makkah. No, some individuals they joined the night before Ashura. It's famous about Hur, but the narrations say there was more than just Hur joining the side of the Imam. Each person had their own trajectory in the way of Imam al-Husain's path. In the same way, when you look in this hall, some may become religious at a younger age, some may become religious at an older age. It's not about judging anyone, but it's about the end point which that human being he reaches. And you look at these companions. For example, you look at an individual like Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn was such a person who had so much negative stigma towards the Imam, that when the Imam was going from Makkah towards Kufa, of course towards Karbala as we know, Zuhair ibn al-Qayn would never stop next to the Imam. Meaning, if the Imam stopped at this halting point, he would stop at a different halting point. But eventually they kept coming and they had to stop at the same halting point. When they stopped at the same halting point, the Imam, he sends a messenger towards Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. He says, oh Zuhair, come and meet me. Zuhair, he says, I'm not meeting you. He sends the messenger back towards him. You find at that moment, the wife of Zuhair says to Zuhair, oh Zuhair, the son of Zahra is calling you, but you're going to reject this view. You're going to reject this message. You know, sometimes it was the women of Karbala, the Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. As I mentioned in the beginning, he was that companion that in his final moments, the Imam took his name after the killing of Ali Asghar. But you find this Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, it was the wife of Zuhair ibn al-Qayn that motivated him to join the side of the Imam. But you find this Zuhair, in one meeting of the Imam, he changes his way. He comes to the path of tawalla and tabarra. And this is why you find when you come towards this path, there are prerequisites that you need for tawalla and there are prerequisites that you need for tabarra. That if you're going to do solidarity with someone, you're going to have unison of the soul, unison of the heart, unison of the action. There are certain things that you need to take you in the direction. The first thing which you need for this unison is muhabbat and love. That the first prerequisites for tawalla and solidarity is muhabbat and love. That if you don't have love for Allah and love for the hujjaj of Allah, then you're not going to go within that path. That's why when you look at the martyrs of Karbala, you find Karbala was a journey of Ishq. Karbala was a journey of love. That you look at these individuals, that Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, he would say that, oh my master Hussein, that if I live and I'm killed and I'm brought back to life and I'm killed again, and this repeats 1,000 times, each of those times I would sacrifice myself for you, oh my master. That isn't this love, that some of the narrations they state, that Habib ibn Madahir and Muslim ibn al-Awsaja would fight side by side. That when an arrow would come towards Muslim, Habib would come up front. When an arrow would come towards Habib, Muslim would come up front. You see on in Muhammad, the children of Sayyidah Zainab fighting, these two young children, one of them would step in front of his brother. The brother would step in front again. You see ishq amongst each other, that this is the reality of love. But no, at the second level, you see even love for the enemies. That what do I mean, love for the enemies? You see Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, the Imam he was seen crying upon that day. I say, oh Imam, are you crying because an arrow went through the chest of Akbar? Are you crying because the arms of Abbas were cut? Are you crying because your 6-month Ali Asghar had an arrow? No, the Imam, he says what? He says, I'm crying for these individuals who are on the other side, because these individuals will go to the fire of hell for killing me. You see, it was the love of humanity which the Imam had, which drove him to go towards. For the Imam was the one who advances humanity. So you find at the first level you have muhabbat, but at the second level, a prerequisite for tawalla is what is ma'rifat. Is that you have to have recognition of this Imam. You have to have the recognition of the reality of this Imam. Who is this Imam? This is that Imam. When you look in the narrations, it's stated about his ziyarah, that the one who does the ziyarah of Hussein, kaman zar Allah fawq al-arsh, that the one who does the ziyarah of Hussein is like the one who has done the ziyarah of Allah above the arsh. And some narrations say the one who do the ziyarah arifan bihaqqihi, recognizing his position, is like the one who has done the ziyarah of Allah above the arsh. That what is this arsh? This arsh is the highest reality of human being. This is the highest reality within creation. That when one wants to reach the highest reality within creation, within spirituality, that wasila which you utilize is Sayyid al-Shuhada. That wasila which you utilize is the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That's why when you look at each of the muqaddasat, right? Each of those places we visit, each of them has a name and a title. Medina is Munawwara, the enlightened. Makkah is Mukarrama, the honored. Najaf is Ashraf Qadmain Sharifain. You find Mashhad is Muqaddas. But when you look at the title of Karbala, Karbala is Mu'alla. That spot which is the most high. Look through the narrations. There have been two spots that are called Mu'alla. Either it's the Karbala of Hussein or it's the Arsh of Allah. Now listen to the tradition. The one who does the ziyarah of Hussein is like the one who has done the ziyarah of Allah fawq al-arsh. That this is this reality of the ziyarah of Hussein. That even when you look in a supplication such as Du'a Kumail, that what is Du'a Kumail? Du'a Kumail is that supplication. That one day Kumail, he sees Amir al-Mu'mineen. He goes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, oh my master Ali, give me some knowledge, give me some secrets of yours. The Imam says, Kumail, you aren't ready for these secrets. Kumail, he goes to the Imam again. He says, oh my master, please tell me. The Imam says, oh Kumail, you aren't ready yet. You find the third time Kumail comes. The Imam, he says, oh Kumail, you aren't ready yet, but I'll tell you anyways. You know, the lesson is, sometimes when we're asking at the door of Allah through the wasila of Ahlul Bayt, if the supplications aren't answered immediately, keep knocking at the door, because eventually the door, it will open. You find Amir al-Mu'mineen, he gives the supplication towards Kumail. And when you look at this supplication, it begins by saying, Allahumma inni as'aluka bi rahmatika allati wasi'a kulla shay. Oh Allah, I ask you through that mercy of yours which is expansive. You know, I've read it in the commentary of some of the ulama, that when they discuss what is this rahmatullahi wasi within Du'a Kumail, what is this expansive mercy, they said we thought what this mercy would be. Eventually we came to the conclusion conclusion, that mercy is Sayyid al-Shuhada Husain ibn Ali, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. That when you see this dua kumail, one of the most powerful du'as within the time period of occultation, you find that Allahumma inni asaluka birahmatika allati wasi'a kulla shay. That mercy, according to some of the scholars, that mercy is Hussein. This is that ma'rifah of Hussein. So you find these were those two prerequisites for tawalla. But for disassociation, there are two prerequisites as well. The first prerequisite for disassociation is what? It is hijrat and migration. You know, many of us, when we think of migration, we think of it in the physical sense. That many of your parents, they migrated from India to Pakistan, for example, or from India to America, or from Pakistan to America. We think of that migration. And you know, in history, we've seen those migrations as well. No, we all know on the night of Hijrat, when Rasulullah goes from Makkah to Medina, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sleeps in the bed of Rasulullah. You know, Allam al-Majlisi in Haqq al-Yaqeen, he writes that there were 24 miracles associated with just the body of Rasulullah. For example, one of those miracles of Rasulullah was that if there was somebody taller than Rasulullah in front of him, Rasulullah would look taller than that individual. No, another miracle was that there would be nur and light coming from the face of Rasulullah. You know, one of the wives, she states that sometimes we would lose a needle. We would look for it in the daytime. We wouldn't be able to find it by the light from the sun. But when Rasulullah would come at night, we would be able to find it from the light which comes from his forehead. Now I say, for those Quraysh to know Rasulullah exactly, for that man on the night of Hijrat to sleep on the bed of Rasulullah, that man must have had that same light coming from Rasulullah. For if the light wasn't the same, those Quraysh, they would know it's not Muhammad sleeping upon the bed, it's another individual. But it must have been that light for them all night to stand around that bed, around that house, thinking, is this Muhammad or is this Ali ibn Abi Talib? You see, this is that reality. But you find this is one example of migration. Another example of migration is the spiritual migration. You find hijrat is a very profound concept if we think about it. And if I had time, I'd go into the verses of the Quran. You find hijrat is a migration away from the path of Allah towards the path of Allah. And the second prerequisite for tabarra and disassociation is jihad. Jihad in the literal sense of struggle. So you see each of these four things. When muhabbat and ma'rifat come together, you have tawalla. When you find jihad and hijrat come together, you have tabarra. But each of them has an outer reality, each of them has an inner reality. You find the outer reality of muhabbat and love is what you know to love someone. But the inner reality is muhabbat is what? Is to love none except for that person. And if you love other individuals, you love through the angle of that individual, through the reason that that individual, he loved them. The second reality of ma'rifat is to recognize somebody. But the inner reality of ma'rifat is to recognize nobody except for that reality. The third thing, the outer reality of hijrat and migration, is that you migrate with your possessions. You migrate with your status. The inner reality of migration is you migrate within the soul towards the path of spirituality. The fourth level is what? You struggle. You struggle with your physical means. The inner reality is you struggle with your spiritual means. Once a person, he reaches this stage, you find that this tawalla and that tabarra, it combines within an individual and it turns into taslim, submission and contentment. That I say that it combines. What do I mean that the tawalla and tabarra, they combine? That the solidarity and the disassociation, they combine. The reality is this, is that when you look in the world and you see nothing except for Allah, that when you look at a human being, you see him as the creation of Allah. When you look at nature, you notice it as ayat and the signs of Allah. Because it doesn't the Quran, it called nature ayat, the same word which is used for the verses of the Quran. So when you look at everything through the lens of Allah, you find nothing else exists to you. So your disassociation and solidarity, they combine. And this reality, you find it manifest in the Imam of the time. That when you look at the world, you look at the world under the lens of the world having a hujjah over it. That if this hujjah and this guide wasn't there, this world, it would collapse. As the narration, it says that if the hujjah isn't there, سَاخَتُ الْأَرْضُ وَأَهْلِهَا, that the earth would collapse and its inhabitants. But you find that this reality of them combining, it gives the human being contentment. It gives them submission. After all, isn't everyone in this hall, no, everyone in the world looking for contentment and peace? That any religion you follow, you ask that person, why do you follow that religion? They'll say that we follow because we want to attain peace. That if there wasn't peace within that religion, they would never follow that religion. In the same way, sometimes they go towards temporary means, drugs, alcohols, temporary relationships, which they think will bring them happiness, but in reality, it's a temporary fix. But you find that that person who is on the path of tawalla and tabarra, he is that individual who has peace and submission. Look at the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada. You know, on the morning of Ashura, Burayr ibn Khudair, he's an individual, you hear his name, but you don't know much about him, and myself included. I'm not putting myself above anyone. You say Burayr ibn Khudair. When you look what Tabari says about Burayr, Tabari describes him with the title of Sayyid al-Qurra, that he was the head of the reciters of the Quran. You know, that Burayr was an old individual. He was seen on the morning of Ashura laughing. Imagine, the battle of Ashura is about to happen. This man, he's smiling, he's saying happy. They say, oh Burayr, you're doing something strange. We've never seen you laugh like this. Burayr, he replies by saying, I'm not a man of laughter. I wasn't a man like this in my young age. Why would I become a man like this in my old age? But no, the reality is this, is that I see the reality of heaven in front of me. It's because of that happiness. You see what happens when you grab the garb of Sayyid al-Shuhada, when you grab the path of Sayyid al-Shuhada. This is the level of peace that the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada had. And look at these companions. You find outside of the Ahlul Bayt, there are virtues upon virtues. Look at an individual like Habib ibn Madahir. If we understood just Habib if we understood, you would begin to see that our lives, they would begin to change. You know, there was a famous scholar by the name of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai. Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai, who was the teacher of a scholar like Ayatollah Bahjat, a teacher like Ayatollah Khomeini, a teacher like Ayatollah Al-Khouyi, the father of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai. And this individual was one of the greatest spiritual instructors. The father of Ayatollah Qadi Tabatabai, he goes to the shrine of Imam al-Hussein. He goes towards that shrine. He begins to think towards himself. You know, Hussein is great. Hussein would give towards me. But you know, even the servants of Hussein are great. Instead, he turns to the shrine of a Habib. He goes towards the Zari of Habib. He says, oh Habib, give me a son who will be a great scholar upon this earth. You find Qadi Tabatabai was born from that Zuha. Who is Habib ibn Madahir? Habib ibn Madahir is that individual that when you do the ziyarah of Hussein in Karbala, you do the ziyarah of Habib twice. Once when you enter, once when you exit. This is just outside the Ahlul Bayt. What can I say about Abbas and an individual like Ali Akbar? You know, they asked an alim, they said to him, who is greater, Abbas or Ali Akbar? Then, you know, somebody asked us this, we wouldn't have an answer. He replies by saying that when you look at the names of Allah, the names of Allah are divided into two categories. The Asma of Allah, names such as Rahman, Rahim, you know the names. There are two categories. Number one is the names of Jamal and the beauty of Allah. Ar-Rahman, the beneficent, the merciful, the forgiving. And then you have the names of Jamal and the strength of Allah. That alim, he replies by saying that Akbar, he represents the Jamal of the Imam. Abbas represents the Jalal of the Imam. That's why Akbar was more muhib, but Abbas was more aziz. That being muhib, being loved, being honored, both of them are type of love, but they're a very different type of love. This is that reality between these individuals. You see a person, he's striving within this path. This is that path a person he reaches when he becomes absorbed within the Imam of his time, when he becomes absorbed within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find this contentment, it manifests itself. That if you want to see whether you reach the stage of contentment, there are certain signs that you look for within yourself. The first sign that you look for within yourself is that when an affliction it befalls you, do you feel happiness or sadness, or are you contented with the amr of Allah? That when somebody has reached such a stage that he has sacrificed his nafs for the imam, that he has sacrificed his nafs for the imam in the path of Allah, you find when something befalls him, when difficulties befall him, you find that he doesn't feel happiness or sadness in the sense that he's questioning Allah. Of course he's a human being, but he has that contentment within Allah. And the second way that you measure yourself is this, is that when it comes towards obedience, you don't have a preference within that matter. That's what that reality. Now come towards taslim and submission. What are the signs of submission within you? The first sign and the most important sign of submission is this, is that when you have these hands, you have these feet, you have these eyes, you have these ears, you have all of these faculties, you don't consider them as your own, but you consider them as borrowed from Allah. You see yourself as a vehicle. That's why when you come do an act, whether it's recite a majlis, whether it's recite a noha, whether it's serve as an organizer, no, whether it's even sitting on the farsh aza, you don't take pride in the fact that it's me, myself, who brought it here. But no, you say, Allah, I thank you that you use me as a vehicle to spread the message of Sayyidul Shuhada. That you use me as a vehicle to spread the message of Sayyidul Shuhada. And this is that reality that we see. And amongst those individuals who reach the peak of this reality, the peak of submersion within the Imam of our time, within the peak of submersion from disassociation of these enemies, is Sayyida Zainab. You know, Sayyida Zainab, it's very difficult for Sayyida Zainab to go into a courtyard. That daughter of Ali who would sit inside the house, she would go to the mosque. That daughter of Ali is going to the courtyard of an individual who drinks alcohol. You find Sayyida Zainab. She goes to the court of Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad, he looks at Sayyida Zainab. He says to her that your Hussein was killed. The children of Hussein were killed. How do you find all of this? We have won. Sayyida Zainab, she looks at him. She says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. That I saw nothing except beauty within this. Imagine that brother who you shared every musibah with. That brother, that when Sayyida Zainab was born, it was stated that Sayyida Zainab, she would cry when she was moved away from the cradle of Imam al-Hussein. And the moment Zahra would take Zainab towards Imam al-Hussein, who was a bit older, towards where the Imam was, you find that she would stop to cry at that moment. That Zainab, when she's asked about the killing of her brother Hussein, she says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. You know, tonight is the night before Arba'een. If we could dim the lights, why do I say dim the lights? Because tonight I'm going to remember that musibah which took place in Sham, right? Within Sham there was a prison which would be dark. You know, when Sayyida Zainab, she was leaving Sham, she says, "Oh women of Sham, I know you are busy. I know you have duties. But whenever you have time, go towards that tiny grave within the prison of Sham. When you go towards that tiny grave, once in a while light a candle at that grave." Then you know the day of Arba'een. What can I tell you about the day of Arba'een? You know, each of you, many of you, you've had a family member pass away. There are two moments which are the most difficult. The first is that moment the family member passes away, because that's separation from your loved one. The second moment is when you go to the grave for the first time. When you go to the grave for the first time, all of those emotions, they come out from within you. For Zainab, the first was Ashura. The day of Arba'een is that second pain of going towards that grave for the first time. That who is Zainab? You know, Zainab is the one who is Ummul Masa'ib. That this one line is enough for the musibah of Zainab. You know, I send my salams upon that Zainab. With Zainab, that Zainab, despite the pain of her brother, she didn't cry for her own children on in Muhammad. That when the the heads of On and Muhammad came, she turned her face away from those heads. Which Zainab? That Zainab whose lineage was cut after Karbala. You know, many of you are Sadat. I'm Sayyid as well. Many of you are Sadat. You know, today there are individuals to call Hussein father, but there is no one to call Zainab mother after Karbala. Then what's the pain of Zainab? You know, when a lady, when she can't have children, when she's barren, each time she holds somebody else's child, it strikes a pain within her heart. Now imagine that you have children like On and Muhammad. Now no one is there to call you mother after Karbala. But you find Zainab. That Zainab. Which Zainab is this? You know, Imam Hussein and Sayyida Zainab, they shared every pain together. When that door was dropped upon Zahra, when Zahra was in between the door and the wall, Zainab and Hussein, they were together. When Amir al-Mu'mineen was struck with the sword, Zainab and Hussein were together. When Imam al-Hassan was poisoned and arrows were fired at his janazah, Zainab and Hussein were together. With the musibah of Ali Akbar, Zainab was there. When the body of Qasim was broken into pieces, Zainab was there. When the arms of Abbas were cut, Zainab was there. When the arrow went into the neck of Ali Asghar, Zainab was there. But there's one musibah that Hussein didn't have to face with Zainab, and that's the musibah of Hussein. But you find this Zainab, she would hold it together for the women. Zainab wouldn't break down. Why? Because if Zainab begins to cry, who will take care of Layla? Who will take care of Rabab? Who will take care of Farwa? This is that Zainab. You know, it was the 11th of Muharram. Sayyida Zainab, she would look towards Imam Zainul Abidin on the 11th of Muharram. She sees that the color changes on the face of Imam Zainul Abidin. The Imam, he begins to sway. The moment he begins to sway, the narration, it says that Sayyida Zainab, she made herself fall from the top of the camel towards the ground. Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, oh my Aunt Zainab, oh my Aunt Zainab, why did you do this? She said, oh my son Sajjad, oh my nephew Sajjad, I was looking at your face. It was as if your soul was about to leave your body. Why did you look like this? The Imam says, oh my Aunt Zainab, I was going past the cut body of my father. What a... This musibah, this is that night before Arba'een. Tonight I'm not holding back on any musibah. I know it's not easy to listen to the musibah of Arba'een. I promise it's not easier to recite that musibah. You find, listen to one line from the 11th of Muharram. On the 11th of Muharram, you find that Sayyida Zainab, she went to the body of her brother Hussein. That's the last time she saw the body of her brother Hussein. Look towards me. You know how they tied the hands of Sayyida Zainab? Look towards me. After this you can cry. You know, we read that the hands of Sayyida Zainab are tied, but when your hands are tied in front of you, at least there's a level of comfort. You know what some of the maqatil say, how they tied the hands of Sayyida Zainab? That behind the neck, the hands of Sayyida Zainab were tied, going upon her elbows. She comes to the body of her brother. She says one line. She says, Anta akhi, are you my brother Hussein? She says, Ya Rasulallah, Hadha Hussein. That, oh Rasulallah, this is your Hussein covered in blood. She then sends salam upon her brothers. What does Zainab say? She says, Assalamu ala al-Husayn al-Madloom al-Maqtool al-Majroor al-Ashana. She says, salam be upon my brother Hussein. Which Hussein? The oppressed Hussein. That Hussein who was killed. That Hussein who was wounded while he was thirsty. Then she says, Al-madbu min al-qafa, the one whose neck was cut from behind. Because when you cut a neck, there are two ways to cut it. Either you cut from the front or you cut from the back of the neck. When Shimar, he sits on Husain, he went towards the back of the neck. As he put that sword towards the neck of Husain, Shimar, he says, I heard a voice saying, Waladi, Waladi, Qataluka Adshana, my son, they're killing you thirsty. It was the voice of Zahra. It was the voice of Zahra. Then what does Zainab says? Zainab, she says, Alladhi qutila fi arzin Karbala bila jurmin wala khata, the one who was killed in the plains of Karbala without making any mistake. Then she says, Alladhi ghusluhu damu, the one whose ghusl was done with the blood from his wounds. Then she says what? Then she says, Alladhi kafanuhu rimalul Karbala, the one whose kafan was the sands of Karbala. This is the musibah of Sayyida Zainab. But you find after this, you find I'm not done yet, for this is the night before Arba'een. You find after this that journey starts, that journey where the daughters of Ali and Fatima, they'll go through courtyards, they'll go through marketplaces. You know, this thought wasn't easy for Amir al-Mu'mineen and Zahra. You know, when Zahra, she went through that courtyard, when she went and gave her sermon, when she went and asked for her right, you find the narration state that Zahra within that courtyard, she stood for 2.5 hours. No one said, oh Bint Rasul, do you want to sit down? The narrations, they state that Zahra had become so weak that when she was coming back, one arm was on Ayman, the other arm was on Fidda. There would be a line being dragged through the ground. Why is there a line through the ground? Because the legs of Zahra didn't have any strength. Zahra, she comes towards her home. She begins to cry. Sayyida Zainab, she says, oh my mother Fatima, are you crying for what happened in that courtyard? She says, oh Zainab, I'm crying for that musibah which you will go through. Oh Zainab, at least there were companions in this courtyard. Oh Zainab, you'll go through the court of a man who is a drunkard. Oh Zainab, you find Zahra, it was painful for Zahra to think that Zainab would go through a courtyard. In the same way, it was painful for Ali to think that Zainab would walk through a bazaar and a marketplace. You know, when Amir al-Mu'mineen, he shifts the center of his caliphate from Medina towards Kufa. You know, Allama Kashif al-Ghita, he would state that there were a number of journeys in Sayyida Zainab's life. All of them were a pain except for the journey from Medina to Kufa. For her father was with her. You know, when the Imam, he gets to Kufa, he says, oh people of Kufa, go inside. They say, oh Imam, why should we go inside? He said, because my daughters are coming through the streets of Kufa. I can't handle anyone looking at my daughters. But you know, then the Imam would do something strange. When Sayyida Zainab, she was in the curtain on the camel, he would stop the camel, he would open the curtain, he would say, oh Zainab, this is the door of Kufa. Then they would walk a little bit further. The Imam would say, oh Zainab, these are the alleyways of Kufa. Then the Imam would walk a little bit further. He would say, oh Zainab, this is the bazaar and the marketplace of Kufa. Sayyida Zainab, she says, oh my father, I don't understand why you're telling me this. If you told Abbas, it makes sense. If you told Muhammad al-Arafiya, it makes sense. Oh my father, I'm going to stay within the home. The Imam says, oh Zainab, a time will come. It'll be this Kufa, oh Zainab. Your hands will be tied, oh Zainab. In front of you will be the head of your brother. The pain of Zainab. You know, you cry. You cry because you hear about Zainab going through a courtyard. How does Imam Zainul Abidin feel that he saw his aunt and his sisters? That's why the Imam has a hadith. Never after Karbala did I look at my aunt except tears began to fall from my eyes. What is the pain of Imam Zainul Abidin? You know, when Minhal comes to Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, oh my master, how long will you cry for after Karbala? The Imam says, oh Minhal, you find that Yusuf, he had many brothers. Yaqub was separated from Yusuf. He knew Yusuf was alive, but he cried so much until he went blind. Oh Minhal, in front of me 18 members of Banu Hashim, they were slaughtered, oh Minhal. Then Minhal, he says, oh my master, isn't martyrdom or your inheritance? Isn't those the way of your family? The Imam, he says, oh Minhal, shahadat is our miras, shahadat is our inheritance, but oh Minhal, is our sisters and aunts being taken through marketplaces without a hijab also our inheritance? This is why when they said to the Imam that what was the most difficult moment for you, the Imam, he said Asham, Asham, Asham. You know, the ulama, they discussed that why did Imam Zainul Abidin say Asham 3 times? They said the first Asham represents the bazaar of Sham. The first Asham is the marketplace of Sham. They said the second Asham represents the darbar of Sham. It represents that courtyard of Sham. The third Asham, it represents the zindan of Sham, that prison of Sham. That I'll narrate what happened at each of these stages. You know, why does the Imam specifically feel pain for the marketplace of Sham? After all, wasn't there a marketplace in Kufa as well? But you know, there's one difference between Kufa and Sham. In Kufa, they would throw dates at the members of the Ahlul Bayt. They would say that this is sadaqah. Sayyidah Zainab would say, as-sadaqatu alayna al-haram. That sadaqah is haram upon us. Within Kufa, a lady, she comes towards Sakina. She says, oh girl, this isn't sadaqah, this is for you. Sakina, she looks at her aunt Zainab. Zainab says, take it. But the lady, she says, oh girl, she was only 3.5 years old. She said, before you take this, make a dua for me. Sakina, she raises her tiny hands. She says, what is the dua? The lady says, in the way you are asir, pray that my children never become asir. In the way you are a captive, pray that my children never become a captive. Then she says, in the way you are yatim, in the way you are an orphan, pray that my children never become orphan like you. She raises her tiny hands. She says, to the right of me being an orphan, to the right of my yatimi, don't let the children of this woman become an orphan. But you know, this was Kufa. In Kufa, they would give them dates. But you know what would happen in Sham? Imam Muhammad al-Baqir has a narration. There were 7 things which were very difficult from my father in Sham. I won't narrate the whole thing. He said the first difficult thing was the fact that the daughters of Ali, they were in a crowd where all of the eyes were upon them. The second thing which was difficult is that people, they would say that these individuals are baghi, they are transgressors. The third thing which was difficult is that they would throw rocks at my aunt Zainab. She said the fourth thing that was difficult is that there would be women upon balconies. When they were upon balconies, they would pour boiling water upon the children. This is Asham. You know, when they were within Sham, an individual, he curses Imam Zainul Abidin. The Imam says, oh man, have you read the Quran? He says, yes, I've read the Quran. He says, have you read the verse? قُلْ لَا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى, that I ask for nothing in return except for love for my family. The man, he says, yes, I've read the verse. Then he says, have you read the verse? إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. He says, yes, I've read that verse. He says, oh man, we are that Ahlul Bayt. That man, he begins to cry. He says, oh man, who are you? He says, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn. He says, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn. This is that bazaar of Sham. I don't know if any of you have gone to Sham. When you've gone to Sham, you see that that marketplace isn't very long. It takes you maybe 10-15 minutes to walk through that marketplace. Some narrations, they state 2.5 to 3 hours it took the daughters of Ali. You know, when they were in that marketplace, a companion of Rasulullah by the name of Sahl bin Sa'd al-Sa'idi, he comes, he says, is there a Eid in Sham that I don't know about? They say, you must be an Arab Bedouin. He says, no, I'm not a Bedouin. I'm the companion of Rasulullah. I'm Sahl bin Sa'd al-Sa'idi. They say, oh Sahl bin Sa'd, don't be surprised if the earth swallows its inhabitants. He says, why? They say it's because they've killed the family of Rasulullah. They've taken their women as captives. They're being paraded through the bazaar. You find Sally goes, when he goes towards the caravan, he sees the head of Abbas. He says there was light coming from that head. Then he sees the head of Hussein, Imam Zainul Abidin. He says, oh Sal, oh companion of my grandfather, is there one thing you can do for us? Take some money, give it towards the army of Umar bin Saad. Give it towards those people who are taking us. Tell them what? Tell them to remove the heads from in front of us. For when they look at the heads, they look at my aunts without the hijab upon their head. Then he says, oh Sahel, can you bring me a piece of cloth? Sahel, he brings Imam Zainul Abidin a piece of cloth. Sahel bin Sadi narrates that I thought he wanted to wear the cloth. What does he do with the cloth? He takes it, he puts it in between that chain on his neck. He says, oh Sal, from Karbala, this chain has been on. I've only narrated the bazaar of Sham. I haven't even gotten towards that courtyard in Sham. I haven't even gone towards that prison in Sham. You know, when they get towards the door of the courtyard, that Zainab who was patient everywhere, Sayyida Zainab sits in front of the door of the courtyard. She begins to cry. The riwayat doesn't say what Zainab remembered. Maybe she remembered the fact that her mother went into a courtyard. You find Zainab, she goes into the courtyard. You know how they go in towards that courtyard in Sham? In front was Imam Zainul Abidin. On one side of him was a child. On the other side of him was another child. Those children were Imam al-Baqir and Sakina. Behind him was Zainab and Kulthum. Behind her was Fidda and the rest of the caravan. You know, when they enter that courtyard, Sayyida Zainab, she looks at that throne. She notices that there was a lady by the name of Hind sitting upon that throne. Sayyida Zainab, she says, oh Kulthum, do you recognize who that lady is? Kulthum says, oh Zainab, after Abbas's martyrdom, I'm not able to see very far anymore. My vision isn't what it used to be after since Abbas was shaheed. Sayyida Zainab says, oh Kulthum, this is Hind which used to work in our house. You see, Hind was wearing a burqa. She had a covering upon her face. When she noticed this caravan, they enter that courtyard. Upon the throne, she says to them, Min ayyi biladin antum, the which city are you from? Sayyida Zainab, she says, Nahnu min bilad al-Madina, that we're from the city of Medina. And she gets off the throne. She says, welcome, O people of Medina. She says, I used to work in a house in Medina. Sayyidah Zainab says, which house did you used to work in? She says, I used to work in the house of Ali and Fatima. Can you tell me about that house? Sayyidah Zainab, she says, who do you want to know about? She says, tell me about Hussein. Tell me about Abbas. Tell me about Ali Akbar. Tell me about Zainab. Tell me about Kulthum. Zainab, she says, oh him. If you want to know about Hussein, that is the head of Hussein, which your husband uses a stick to poke at the teeth. If you want to know about Abbas, that is the head of Abbas. If you want to know about Zainab, oh Hind, I am Zainab. Oh Hind, it's not easy to recognize me after Karbala. Hind, she runs up to Yazid. When she runs up to Yazid, the narration it says the hijab of Hind that falls off. Yazid says, oh Hind, you're coming in a courtyard without a hijab. Hind says, oh Yazid, you talk about my hijab, whereas the ones who taught me hijab are in this courtyard. The court of Sham. Imagine 12 individuals upon one rope. 700 individuals are looking at them. Imam Zainul Abidin says in the court of Sham, they made us sit where the slaves sit, and we sat as slaves within the court of Sham. In front of the Imam was the cut head of his father. Yazid takes a stick and he pokes that head. This is the bazaar of Sham. You know, a point comes within the bazaar of Sham. After Imam Zainul Abidin, he gives this sermon. You find after he gives this sermon, Yazid says, kill that individual. Kill Zainul Abidin. At that point, Sayyidah Zainab, she steps in front of the Imam. The riwayat it says, she places her neck on the neck of Imam Zainul Abidin. She says, I promise my brother Hussein, as long as Zainab is alive, Zainab won't let anything happen to the amanat of Hussein. At that point, Yazid says, then kill this lady as well. When Yazid said, kill this lady as well, Janab Fizza, she steps in front of Zainab. She says, I promise Fatima that as long as Fizza is there, Fizza will take all of the slabs. Fizza will take every pain. She won't let Zainab have any pain. Yazid, he says, kill this lady as well. As the man, he raises the sword, Fizza, she noticed that the man was from Abyssinia as well. She says, oh man from my tribe, are you going to listen towards that, Yazid? You find they put their swords down. They say, oh Yazid, we won't carry out this act. You find within that courtyard, this was the court of Sham. But you find after this, there's one musibah I've been saving. That musibah was that musibah which happened in that prison in Sham. You know what prison is this? Forgive me, my voice isn't bearing with me. You know what prison is this? This is that prison which didn't have a roof upon it. That when Imam Zainul Abidin was within the prison, in the daytime his neck would burn from the chain. In the nighttime he would be in pain from the cold. You know, at one point when his neck was burning, Sayyidah Zainab, she comes to Imam Zainul Abidin. She stands over Imam Zainul Abidin. She looks towards Karbala. She says, oh my brother Hussein, I left your body in the sun, but oh my brother Hussein, today Zainab is giving shade towards your son Zainul Abidin. But there was one musibah in Sham which was like no other musibah. That musibah is the pain of that 3.5-year-old daughter of Imam al-Hussein. You find a night had come. Sakina, she goes to sleep. When she goes to sleep, in her dream she sees her father. She says, oh Baba, after you I was looking for my uncle Abbas. I was looking for my uncle Abbas. For when they would come and slap me, I would remember my uncle Abbas. She wakes up crying. They say, oh Yazid, the daughter of Hussein cries. Yazid, he says, then why don't we send her the head of Hussein? You find Yazid, he sends that head. He puts it in a bowl. When Sakina, she sees the bowl, she says, oh man, I'm not hungry. He says, this isn't food. When she takes the bowl, they uncover the bowl. She sees the head of her father. She says, oh Baba, who is the one that cut your neck? Oh Baba, after you, they took those earrings which you gave on Eid, oh Baba. This is that pain of Sakina. This is that prison of Sham. Sakina, she passes away holding that head. The Imam, he says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You know, a point it comes in Sham, where Yazid, he noticed the influence of Ahlul Bayt was increasing. He says, O Zainul Abidin, I'm ready to free you. The Imam says, free me, but on 3 conditions. Number 1, return those heads towards us. Number 2, return those tabarrukat and that which you took from us. Number 3, give us a house where we can mourn. For whenever we would mourn with your soldiers, they would hit us, they would use their whips. Now we want to mourn. You find when those tabarrukat, when they were returning, the first thing which came back were those chadars. The first thing which came back was those scarves. Zainab, she takes her scarf. Layla takes her scarf. But as the scarves were coming, there was a tiny scarf. Sayyida Zainab takes that scarf. She goes into the prison. She puts it on the grave of Sakina. She says, oh Sakina, your hijab is back, oh Sakina. After that, you find a ring, it comes. A ring, it comes. Which ring was this? You know, when Mukhtar, he caught a man, he said, oh man, what is your name? He says, my name is Bujdil. The Imam says, oh Bujdil. What? Mukhtar, he says, oh Bujdil, what did you do on the day of Ashura? He says, on the hand of Hussein was a ring. I wanted that ring. I would try to pull off that ring. That ring, it wouldn't come off. So I took my dagger. I cut the finger off. I cut the finger of Hussein. After that, there came a shirt which was ripped, a shirt which was covered in blood. Sayyida Zainab says, give me that shirt, for that is the shirt which my mother Fatima, she sold for herself. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالم. The night is the night of Shab Arba'een. One wasila on this night, one wasila. I know you can't handle anymore. I know it was a long musibah. I know it's not easy to continuously cry. When you continuously cry, your eyes become dry, your throat, it becomes to hurt, it becomes hard to breathe. To continuously cry is what Sayyida Zainab did after Karbala. But I'll give you one wasila. You know, I recited the Shahada of Sakina, right? Now let me tell you how the Imam buried Sakina. You know, there was a marja by the name of Sayyid Mohsin al-Amuli. You know, whenever I narrate this narration, I've only narrated 2 or 3 times in my life. But whenever I narrated this, I saw pain in the hearts of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt on their faces. Sayyid Mohsin al-Amuli's son was seen hitting his head against the grave of Sakina in Sham. He would hit his head, he would cry. He would hit his head, he would cry. They say, oh Sayyid, why are you crying like this? He says, when my father was marja, there was a gatekeeper to the shrine of Sayyida Zainab by the name of Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimishki. Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimishki, he had 6 daughters. One night, one of his daughters in her dreams, she saw that Sakina came towards her. She said, my grave has water within it. My grave needs to be re-leveled. You find this daughter, she wakes up, she tells Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimishki. Sayyid Ibrahim Ibrahim al-Dimashqi, he says, this is just a thought. This is not permissible to do this. Then the second daughter sees the dream. Then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, and the sixth. Then Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimashqi, when he goes to sleep, he sees Sakina within his dreams. That 3.5-year-old girl says, oh Sayyid Ibrahim, I sent a message through your daughters, oh Sayyid Ibrahim. Why didn't she listen to that message? Sayyid Ibrahim, he goes to Ayatollah Mohsin al-Amali. He says, this is my dream. He says, go immediately. We need to level this grave. We need to remove the janaza. As they dig the grave, you find a point comes. Sayyid Mohsin al-Amali, he says, everyone step back. This is the janaza of a Sayyida. Only a Sayyid can go in. Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimashqi, he goes in the grave. When he comes out of the grave, he falls on the ground crying. They say, why are you crying like this? Sayyid Ibrahim al-Dimashqi, he says, I'm crying because of how Muslim my Imam was. Because of how Gharib my Imam was. He says, what do you mean? He says, when my Imam, he buried his sister, he didn't even have a kafan to put upon his body. He buried her in that shirt which he used to wear. He buried her in such a way that her hands were still... Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. When the tears fall, you find the du'as are accepted. Ya Allah, wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are in difficulty, help them. Ya Allah, through the right of how madloom Sakina was, through the right of how madloom Zainab